Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Series 2023, where we aim to add value to people's lives, happening every Wednesday and Thursday on ebizradio.com. We chat everything about leadership, coaching, and marketing, and today's conversation you're really going to enjoy. To catch the Lunchtime Series, you can check it out on all the major podcast channels. And to grow the channel, please like, follow, and share to your networks, guys. On today's coaching segment, we have a very interesting conversation that when I first spoke to this wonderful coach, she gave me some beautiful insights. And so loving the insights on what she's about to share with us today. Please help me welcome the integrative nutrition health coach, Suzy Wood. Hey, Suzy, how are you doing?
Hi, Kevin. How are you? I'm doing well.
Fantastic. You're calling all the way from
New York.
New York.
I'm in New York.
There we go. Yes. So, Suzy, don't you kick it off for us to tell us, what it is you do, but also how it is that you got to where you are, and sort of a bit of an overview of what we're going to be discussing today.
Sure. So I'm an integrative nutrition health coach. And that is an area where we focus mostly on lifestyle and nutrition, putting it all together to achieve the best health that we can. And I specifically focus on helping divorced people get their lives back in control, because divorce is incredibly stressful, and that stress can lead to physical ailments, emotional ailments, mental ailments. And so we address lifestyle, we address nutrition, to try to make sure that their chapter 2 can be better than their chapter 1.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that, because that's a conversation we had, right? Because as much as we think that, I don't want to make a generalization, but a lot of people kind of go, oh, now that I'm divorced, I'm this divorced person, and they kind of label themselves that they're just this one thing, and that's not true, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I really work with my clients to make sure that they understand that divorce does not have to define them, that they don't have to feel that they're washed up, they're used materials. This is a total brand new opportunity to reinvent yourself, to start your life new. You know what didn't work, and now you're wiser, you're smarter, you're older, and you just don't have a lot of time, to mess around. So you're going to do it right. Yeah. And it's totally possible to reinvent yourself and just start again. And so that's what I did in my own life. I've been divorced for about 3 years, and I was married for 17. So a very long chunk of my adulthood. And I took my divorce as an opportunity to start over. I re-educated. Well, first of all, I also moved continents. I was living in England for 11 years. I moved back to the States, back to New York, and started over in that capacity as well. Went back to school, launched a company, which I never in a million years would have thought possible. And I'm living my best life. I've met somebody else. I'm in a wonderful relationship. And it was all because I took the time to heal and to figure out what was not working in my life. Obviously, I got out of a bad relationship, but I also analyzed other areas in my life that weren't going very well. I really put into practice, and that's how I developed my program, where I help other people, because I've definitely lived through this. So I looked at lifestyle factors, I looked at my nutrition, I looked at my environment, and put together how I wanted to live my life. And that's what I help people do now. And a lot of it is also about just confidence building, because we've been so hurt from coming out of a relationship. It's hard to put yourself out there again.
And that's one of the things that I want to ask now, because, I've moved to another country, and I remember I didn't do it for very long, because I was like, oh, I don't like this at all. And came back and had to restart my life as well. But I mean, going through all of those life-defining moments, because divorce is life-defining, changing a career is life-defining, opening a business is life-defining.
Absolutely.
It's like, why the hell would you go and do all of that in one moment? So just unpack that a little bit for us. I'm like, how did you get to a point where where you were coping, and how did you, because that is some serious, there's some serious moments when that kind of stuff happens, where you are incredibly doubtful and you're incredibly sad. So you have to pick yourself up and kind of go, okay, cool. Today, I'm going to get through today. And if I can get through today, then that's all I need to do for today. How did you do that? What was that process for you like?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's situation is so unique. And in my situation, I felt like my marriage had ended so many years before. As I said, I was living in England for 11 years, and the marriage really started to break down um, probably about 15 years before we were actually divorced. So I had all this time to prepare and to think about it. And I knew, just given the situation of where I was living and the ages of my children, I sort of convinced myself, like, okay, well, we'll stay married for the time being, and then at the right time, we'll look into divorce. And so I feel like I had a very long time to prepare and think about what I wanted to do next in my life. Was that the right decision? I don't know. That's just the way my situation was, because I was living abroad. I didn't have family close by. I had a lot of friends, but I needed the support, and everybody needs support when they're going through divorce. So I had been working in high-tech marketing, and I sort of knew by the time I got back to New York, I really didn't want to continue in that career. I had always been interested in nutrition. And so when I decided to, after I was divorced, that's when so I got through that whole process, because going through the process of divorce is just a section of your life that you have to get through. When you come out the other side, that's when I was really thinking about, what do I want next? And that's when I decided to get trained and get a certificate in integrative nutrition health coaching, and then launch my new career. So I had a long time to think about it. And now I really don't regret it, because I work from home. I can see clients, as it fits into my schedule. I still have my children, one at home, one in university. So it just fits with my life. And that's what people need to think about. Where do they want to be when they grow up, basically. So, and then we put goals together to try to get there.
Yeah, and what sort of led you to taking nutrition and health and combining, or kind of niching it to a degree into divorced people? Like, what is that connection? Because I think people also go, well, how is that fitting together?
Right. Well, when I was looking at lifestyle factors and how they affect the foods that we eat and how we live our lives, I started honing in more on the stress, because when your lifestyle factors are out of whack, that leads to stress. So imagine you're not in a great job, or you're not getting along with your boss. Come Sunday night, you're probably going to be sitting down. You're going to get anxious. You're going to worry about your week ahead. Maybe you have some ice cream or some crisps, or something else that just probably isn't really going to nourish you, because you're sort of dealing with that stress, taking it out in food cravings. And many people act on those food cravings. So the stress of being in a job that isn't satisfying could lead to food cravings. It happens in other capacities in our lives. Obviously, we're familiar with relationships going wrong, and that stress that going through relationships can come out in physical ailments. For me, it was actually back pain. I developed horrible back pain. It prevented me from sleeping. I ended up going to the doctor because I couldn't take the pain anymore. I had a muscle relaxer that I had started using, never did anything like that before. And I ended up getting into a car accident. I mean, it was a horrific experience, and it's all due to the stress. And so when I started seeing clients, and some of my clients were going through divorce, and they were saying, I feel so stressed. I don't know how I can cope. Some of my clients were having thinning hair. They were breaking out in acne. They had digestive problems. One client, she had PTSD seizures that developed through the stress of her divorce and the abuse that she had suffered through that divorce. Wow. I mean, we're talking really serious chronic issues that can happen just from the stress. And so to me, it sort of naturally came that looking at the lifestyle factors and the stress that can cause on our lives, putting that together with nutrition to try to get people to a place where they can live healthier lives. And so when I work with my clients, a lot of it is dealing with that anxiety, with the stress. And there have been studies that going through divorce is the second most stressful event that anybody can experience. And the number one is losing a spouse. And, the stress sometimes comes in very slow, unusual ways. And you have to be really intuitive to figure that, to tap into that. Sometimes you're like, oh, my stomach hurts a little bit. It must have been something I ate. Or maybe I picked up a stomach bug. And really, it could actually be stress that you're going through, either from divorce or from other lifestyle factors that are out of balance. So tapping into that stress and figuring out how we can deal with it and alleviate it is critical to overall health.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because do you find that because the divorce rate and statistics that support that conversation or that the fact of life really, do you think it's because it's so high that this is why this is also why this is something you feel that people need? We need more divorce health coaches. And because it makes so much sense when you put it together the way you have around how much stress that really leads to, and how you go through so much anxiety and trauma, that you need a coach to be able to help you get through this kind of stuff. Does that sort of work hand in hand for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think 50% of marriages end in divorce these days. It's kind of normalized. Growing up, I don't think I knew anybody really. Maybe one or two of my parents' friends had been divorced. I'd have to really think about it. But now it's so different. There are so many people who are divorced. I think people are not willing to deal with crap anymore, and they want to be they want to live happier lives. They don't want to just settle. I mean, in some ways, I settled and stayed in a marriage that wasn't working for many years. But I think people are, not doing that so much anymore. And so, yes, divorce, I don't know, it's on the rise, I suppose, and people need that support. It's something that is very difficult to go through. You lose friends, you lose family. I mean, what do you call your in-laws who aren't your in-laws anymore? I've heard actually the term ex-laws, which I find kind of funny. But, you've lost a whole family. Right?
Yeah,
I mean, if you've been married for many years, like these people really are your family. Maybe you've been calling these people mom and dad, or you have your sisters and your brothers, and all of a sudden, poof, they're gone. It's very strange. And besides that, your ex, here's somebody you shared a life with together, and all of a sudden you're not in a relationship anymore, but you kind of are, especially if you still have children. Just because the judge gave you a piece of paper that said you're no longer divorced, you still have to co-parent. So, you go through a year or two or more of the divorce process, you get this piece of paper that says you're divorced, and then the next day you're like, okay, well, what time are you picking up the kids? It's just this very weird situation to be going through, and people need help. They need help. And how do you co-parent? How do you set boundaries with somebody who you're no longer in a relationship and not living in the same house with? How do you deal with the friends that went to your ex and sided with your ex? How do you deal with not having your in-laws around anymore? And so it can be a very lonely experience. I know I relied on my family for support, but at a certain point, they really couldn't hear anymore, and it was upsetting them too much. Yeah. And so I always recommend people have a therapist on hand as part of your team, because it's something that it's so difficult. You want to have somebody who is neutral, even if they're not giving you advice, just somebody who can hear you and listen to you. And besides the lawyers and the financial people and all of that, they're definitely part of your team. And then when you want to put your pieces back together and figure out how you want to heal, and especially if you're having physical ailments and dealing with food cravings, and maybe you've gained weight, maybe you're not happy in how you look or how you feel, you want to enter the dating world again, and you need to build that confidence, then that's really where somebody like me could come in to help put you on the right path, set goals with you, and put you in a program so that you can look at the lifestyle factors, look at the nutrition, heal your body from inside and outside.
And you are touching on some of the stuff that's my next question is here is because divorce is such a grueling process, and whether you initiate it or not, many people feel depleted. So where do you start in helping people putting their lives back together? Because it's a mental thing. I know that I'm an emotional eater, so the moment I do have a bit of anxiety or something's not going as well as I planned it to go, I sort of binge eat at 10 o'clock at night, kind of thing, and not useful.
Right.
But I mean, where do we start? What does that process look like?
Yeah. So the first thing I like to do with people is an exercise called the Circle of Life. And we look at 12 lifestyle factors that really need to be in balance in order for us to live healthy lives. So there are things like our career, our finances, relationships, our level of joy, our health, overall health, our level of spirituality. And it doesn't necessarily mean religious. It could be being connected with nature. Creativity, that's important. Do you have any outlets where you're singing in a band, or you're writing your life story, somewhere where you can really express yourself? Also, your level of home cooking. That's also critical, because if you're outsourcing all of your food and your nutrition to restaurants and fast food places and drive-throughs, that's might be the cause of some internal inflammation and not healing your body. And giving your body the right nutrients. So home cooking is very important, and also your home environment. So there are 12 lifestyle factors. I might have left one or two of them out, but we look at those, and we look at what's working in our lives, and we look at what isn't working. And we pat ourselves on the back for the areas that are working, because it's important to be positive and to look at areas that are going well, because certain areas could be going. Maybe you have a fabulous career, and if you can have that be a wonderful thing in your life, then that the areas that you're going to be working on can also reach that a good place. And so we take the areas that aren't working so well, and then we make very specific goals to address those areas, to try to improve them. And I like to use the word SMART goals, which stand for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. And rather than saying something like, I want to meditate more, we make a goal that's very specific. On Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'm going to do a 10-minute guided meditation right before I go to bed, and I'm going to start tomorrow. That's very different than I want to meditate more, because that's just too nebulous, and it doesn't keep us on track, and we have nothing to show for if we've achieved it or not. And so setting very specific goals based on the lifestyle factors that we want to improve really starts putting us on a path. And then I also work with people on setting new habits so that we can start achieving those goals. So usually it's about a 5-month process. I work with people, we meet every other week for an hour, we do a Zoom call, and over the 5 months, we learn a lot about the lifestyle factors, setting the goals, achieving the goals. I keep them accountable. And we also weave in the nutrition aspect depending on what their needs are. Maybe they want to lose weight. Maybe they want to, include more physical activity in their lives. That's actually a very important lifestyle factor as well. And we work together to try to achieve overall health. And then, as they're coming out of a divorce and entering into their new world, and maybe wanting to start dating again or making meaningful connections again, they feel much more confident in doing that. And just living the lives that they want to live, whether they want to be with somebody else or not. Maybe they want to live a single life, and that's totally fine too.
Do you find that sometimes, because you're working sort of in nutrition, but also working with trauma, because that is what divorce really does to people a lot of the times, do you find that sometimes people start displaying psychosomatic kind of sort of disorders and connected to the psychological? Because I know that I've, with Louise Hay's, the alchemy of healing, that she speaks around, what ailments you're finding in your body usually very often has a psychological connection to it. Do you find that, that also happens, and that also starts displaying in, suddenly someone has this, inflammation, or somebody has a serious, like you mentioned, backache that's triggered by this kind of life event? Do you actually see it changing after a while?
Yeah, I mean, that can happen. I'm not a therapist, so I don't
Yeah.
delve in too deeply into that, but I definitely have lived it as far as the stress coming out in physical ailments. And so is certainly a link. I mean, like this person who had literally had PTSD seizures from the stress of her divorce and the abuse. She actually had a quite abusive relationship for 27 years. So so definitely some people, can trace it back to that. And they do improve. I mean, it definitely takes a team. Somebody who really is experiencing those types of feelings might need to see somebody else, a therapist or, a psychiatrist perhaps.
Yeah.
But from my point of view, how I work with them, alleviating their stress and working on techniques so that they can compartmentalize what they have been through. This is an experience that they have gone through. It doesn't have to define them. We sort of put that in a particular area and deal with it. And I find that often helps, that they can just put, especially if they're just going through the divorce, they can put all of that stuff that's going on with the conversations with the lawyers, with the financial people, with their ex, and just, from 10 to 11 a.m., that's the conversation I'm going to have. But the rest of my day, I'm going to deal with other things. And it doesn't have to overwhelm us. And it's very difficult to do that, though. It really, really is, because we're going through this traumatic experience. But that's something that I find often helps people, just learning and going through the steps of how to separate that out.
I once had I've seen a number of psychologists, and it's so I've got my t-shirts already. But one of the things that I remember, like you're saying, is sort of boxing it. And one of my psychologists said, you need to learn to be able to box your sadness. And I was like, what do you mean? And the reason he gave behind that was, the week before he graduated to become an actual doctor and a psychologist, his father passed away. And so, he had to finish his exams, and it was the last sort of stretch that he had to go through. And he was like, well, I just boxed him. And then I would schedule like a 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock, like sad
grieving time or something.
Grieving time.
Yeah.
And then I would carry on, and I'd study, and I'd, get it, get it done.
Right.
And it was such a useful technique, and it was such a simple way of doing it. But, so profound to kind of go, this life event that you go through, like, you're still alive, you're still going through this life.
Yeah.
So, if you can manage to find ways to actually deal with it more specifically, it's a good coping mechanism. But I mean, what are some of the tips and tools that you could give people wanting to create a beautiful post-divorce life? Because I mean, even that sentence even sounds strange, right? A beautiful post-divorce life.
Right.
So I mean, because it's not the way, people don't really package it that way. So it's a beautiful way of thinking about it.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, there are so many things that you can do, and it depends on what your goals are as well. But most people, they don't want to be lonely anymore. They want to have a rich and fulfilling life. And there are things that you can do when you're, on your own. You can fill your space with music. You can listen to podcasts like this. You can have that talk radio or something going on in the background. So there's conversation. And that's just that one little thing that you can do just to feel a little bit less lonely. You can reach out to different groups. I don't know if Meetup is in South Africa, but it's very popular it's very popular here in the States. And if you like hiking, if you like painting, if you like international films, you can find a group and you start meeting like-minded people. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to lead to relationships. I mean, like a romantic relationship, it can lead to any kind of relationship. And you have those connections with people. And it's really important to build that confidence so that you can start doing some of these things that you might not have done if you were in a couple, right? You might want to travel on your own and see what that's like. Solo traveling is a whole area. There are cruise lines that are dedicated to solo traveling. Maybe you just want to take a trip to, a neighboring town and poke around shops and see see who you find. Join a book club, things like that. So there's a lot of ways that we can deal with our loneliness and reach out and start meeting people again. And I mean, that's just one way to tap into loneliness. I would say the number one thing is to really go back and look at these lifestyle factors and figure out what you want to improve on, and then start making some goals. So, if, I don't know, let's say your career, isn't satisfying. Maybe you need to start working because you hadn't been working. So we approach that in a systematic way, finding different opportunities, contacting people in your network, maybe joining some professional organizations. And so they're, making these to-do lists so that you can start attacking that goal and reaching, what you're looking for. So, those are just some things that I work on with clients, just depending on what their goals are.
Yeah, and as you mentioned this, what sort of comes to mind is like, don't do the thing that you typically would go and do when you're feeling sad. So typically, people would shut down. They want to be alone. They want to lie down. They don't want to get out of bed. They like all the usual general kind of behaviors we associate with depression or sadness or loss.
Right.
Don't do that. you can actively decide
you have to force
not to
yourself.
do that, right? You have to be able to do that. The other thing that I find as you're speaking through it now is how do you then I think one of the questions is also do I then start carving out an identity, a brand new identity post divorce? Like post this now after we've gone through it, how do I, and maybe that's also part of the questions, right, that I need to sort of solidify for myself, is like, who am I when I'm not that married person? Who am I when I'm this person doing this life in this way? And I think a lot of people get stuck in the depression and the sadness and the loneliness based on the fact that their identification of who they are has been built around a relationship or the meaning that they've given that something, right? So it's really being able to carve that out as a new identification.
Yeah. And it's also, that can sound a little bit scary. So sometimes it's just an extension of who you already are. You don't have to have 100% total new transformation. Like there's already so much change going on. You might be living in a new place. Maybe you have to start working if you weren't working before. You need a different job because your financial situation is different. There's already so much change going on. So sometimes it's just a matter of kind of coming back to your roots and just being really authentic and figuring out what you want. And it doesn't mean you have to, all of a sudden dye your hair and you're now blonde, and you come out, as a totally different person.
I mean, you can.
Right?
Like,
you can, sure, why not? If that's going to make you feel good, right? And that's the thing is like you have that opportunity to do that. But yes, I was just going to say that, like dealing with the sadness and making sure that it doesn't get into depression. I think it goes back to having that team person. So, when I hold my clients accountable for their goals, they're moving forward. And that is so satisfying, because if they didn't have somebody holding their hand and holding them accountable, they could very easily slip into a lonely depression. And so they're moving in the direction, because we've set those goals for themselves, they're moving in that direction to better their lives. And you're moving forward, and you can get through that hump of, okay, I'm no longer with this person. I'm no longer married. I'm sort of mourning the loss of this relationship. It takes some time, but then eventually you get there. And when you start working on yourself, you can propel yourself forward. And then that sadness sort of starts dissipating, and you're now in a whole new direction, and you're moving forward in the way that you want. And it's setting those goals. The other thing is also when you're taking care of yourself, you start feeling better about yourself. If you were never one to really exercise and you start moving your body in a healthful way that makes you feel good, you're going to feel good about yourself. You're going to be getting fresh air, for example. You're going to be moving your muscles. You're going to be increasing your lung capacity, your flexibility. It doesn't mean you have to go run a marathon. Sometimes it's just a matter of going for a walk or joining a, I don't know, a gym, a fitness club, or starting to do yoga, something simple, but you're moving your body starts feeling good. You build that confidence. You're moving, it's all about self-care. So, it's so important to have that form of self-care when you're recovering from a divorce.
Absolutely. Susie, it's so fascinating, and I love the fact that you've put all of this into sort of a context and just taken a different approach to what wellness and what health and divorce can look like for people, because I think people get stuck and people don't know how. I mean, and that also is one of your Facebook groups that you've got, the Divorce Detox Facebook group, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I started a private divorce detox Facebook group, as you said. And so it's something you have to join. So anybody can join. It's all free. But I did want to have a little bit of a screening process, make sure that, the right people are coming in there and nobody's coming to sell them, crazy stuff. And so there's just a few questions that I ask people, but if you can find it, the Divorce Detox on Facebook, and it's a really nice support group for people who are going through divorce. Some people are in the thick of it. Some people are many years past the divorce process. And we share ideas. We support each other in kinship, in community. We post things to lift each other up and support each other when we're not in the right place. And I also run weekly support calls through that group. That's the first Saturday of every month. It's 10 a.m. Eastern time, which isn't too crazy late in South Africa. It's free, and it's a chance for us to get together and talk about co-parenting or setting boundaries or how to make connections again with other people, how to work on self-care, whatever the topics are. So we meet. The announcements for the dates and the link are in that Facebook group, in the Divorce Detox, and it's just a wonderful way for us to come together as a community. And I also have, it's been really nice, and some really nice supportive comments have been coming through that Facebook group. So I'd love for anybody who's in that position of recovering from divorce to join us.
And then lastly, I mean, like we're going to put all your links out there, but if we want to go and check out the website,
sure.
What is your website and where do we go?
Yeah. So my company is called True Wellness Within. And it's .com, truewellnesswithin.com. And so you can check out me there. And I have a bunch of resources. And there's one page that is called Divorced Now What? And there's actually a free quiz there people can take. Have you healed from the stress of your divorce? And it's a quick quiz. You can see what stressors have been going on in your divorce. Have you healed from it? Where you can go from there. So I encourage people to go to truewellnesswithin.com/divorced with a D at the end, and they can take that quiz.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Guys, that's Suzy Wood, integrative nutrition health coach. And sorry, all of these links are going to be in the description boxes below. Suzy, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for being on the Lunchtime series. It was a fascinating conversation.
It was wonderful. Thank you.
Chat to you soon. Cheers for now.
Yes.
Bye.